Hello, Wobbly Phil here. If you watched last week's video, you'll have seen that the first 25 years of my motorcycle history contains an awful lot of Hondas, as well as one or two weirder choices among the 10 bikes I owned up until the year 2000. In the last 25 years, I think it's true to say I've become a little more confused in my decision making. Well, that sort of thing happens when your brain and everything else shrivels to the size of a walnut. And getting your leg over a motorcycle, something you used to do without thinking in your teens and 20s, takes several days of careful planning. So, how have I fared in the noughties, teens and 20s? There's only one way to find out.
That's Homer Simpson's computer.
Oh God, it's spreading!
It's the new millennium. Computers are bursting into flames due to the Y2K bug. And my Honda CBR 600RR has been nicked from outside my house, just a few months after I bought it. Determined not to be without two wheels, I dashed out to my local Kawasaki dealer the next day and bagged myself my first, but by no means my last, Kawasaki, a Kawasaki Z1000. The big, mean green machine looked great and sounded even better. A bit buzzy for some reason, and the groaning noise from the filler cap after a long hot ride was a bit off-putting. I later discovered that all Kawasaki's at the time had this in common, and I still don't know why. A thoroughly modern machine for the era, it was everything I hoped for. Having been bitten by the green bug, I was ready to have another go at something sportier. I picked up a ZX-10R, even faster than the Honda 600RR, but heavier and slightly more difficult to hustle round the bends. It wasn't an easy tourer. Lucky for me then that sports tourers were becoming a big thing. There was a new super impressive bike at the Kawasaki dealers. The ZZR 1400R. I'd admired this beast through the window every day as I walked past the dealership into town. It looked different, awesome, and was touted as a contender for the Hayabusa throne. With a 0 to 60 of 2.6 seconds, a sub 10-second quarter mile, and a top speed of 186 miles per hour in a package that cost around £8,000 at the time. Should I? Shouldn't I?
Well, yes, you should.
Much more comfortable as a tourer than the ZX-10, I took it through northern France and then to Jersey in the Channel Islands. I did confirm that 186 miles per hour was easily achievable. So easily, in fact, that you could do it without really noticing. Worried that the ZZR was a bit of an accidental license loser, and because my job at the time depended on me being able to drive, it had to go. A shame, because it was one hell of a motorcycle. If you watched the first half of this video last week, you'll know that I've always had a rather misguided affinity for British bikes. So to calm down from the ZZR 1400, I went in a different direction. To be honest, it felt like going into reverse. With Triumph now re-established as a reliable UK manufacturer, even if a lot of it was coming from Thailand, I bought a second-hand Bonneville 750.
And look at the front mudguard, very skimpy, blade-type guards they used to call these.
Such a good retro look that 80-year-olds would come up to me and say, "I had one of those in the 60s. Oh no you didn't. The Bonneville was gutless. White van man zoomed past me on dual carriageways and it felt borderline unsafe to even contemplate overtaking nanas in their Honda Jazzes. It had to go.
Kawasaki lets the good times roll. Kawasaki lets the good times roll. Get aboard, get
I still had a hankering for the 1970s. Kawasaki's Z1s had by now reached silly prices, but its successor, the Z900, had been somewhat overlooked and was still affordable. I picked one up for £5,000. It had recently had a rebore and been fitted with oversized pistons, and was a bit smoky from one of the pots, which should have rung alarm bells. But of course, as I'd done with the Commando, I just jumped on and rode it for a bit, until the problematic cylinder finally gave up the ghost, and I was left with an inline-4 doing a reasonable impression of a Triumph Trident triple. The dealership I'd bought it from refused to do anything about it. "It'll be okay," they said. "You just need to put running-in oil in it." Ah, the old Jedi mind trick. I tried phoning a few shops that specialised in quack 4s about the possibility of an engine rebuild, but they were quoting a year's wait and $5,000. By then I was desperate to get rid of the Kawasaki, even though it would have been a great 1970s bike to own, comparable to the Commando in many ways in terms of handling, speed and curb appeal. In the end, having gone all legal on their arses, the dealership agreed to swap this Kawasaki for a brand new Royal Enfield Continental GT. The Royal Enfield was a dog of a motorcycle, poorly finished, slower than a bicycle, and bordering on being a death trap. Within the first 2 miles from brand new, it slid out from under me, going at 20 miles an hour, round a slight bend in the dry. I blamed the tyres, which appeared to have been made from recycled Tupperware. Some nice people at a dealership in the Midlands took it off my hands, swapping it for a 5-year-old Honda CB1300. I was back playing with the big boys. This was so much better than my Hinckley Bonneville, no longer confined to planning my overtakes 2 miles in advance so I could build up a bit of speed. Still not massively comfortable on a 350-mile trip, but then what motorcycle is? It'll pull power wheelies in second gear. At 520 pounds, it is heavy by my standards, and going fast downhill into a bend can lead to some squeaky bum moments as the suspension runs out of ideas, but it'll never let you down. That old yearning for a British motorcycle never left me, and in 2019 I bought a Triumph Trident T160 from a lovely old gentleman in the Midlands. He'd cherished it for 20 years and had even kept a logbook of all the maintenance he'd done on it, right down to when he'd changed the spark plugs. As well as a Commando, I'd always lusted after a Trident, and the sound does not disappoint. There were, nonetheless, 1 or 2 mechanical issues to sort out, which ended up costing me a shed load of money. What started as a minor weep of oil from the top end finished up as a complete engine rebuild to TT standards. Not what I had asked for, and definitely a shock. I've told the story of that in another video, the link is in the description. While the Trident was on its sabbatical for a year, I got a hankering for something a bit more modern than my CB1300. After looking at the Yamaha XSR 900 Triple and thinking, as all us old blokes always do, about the Kawasaki Z900 RS, I bought my first ever American motorcycle, the Indian FTR 1200 V-twin. The first one overheated within 30 miles on its first run. But the replacement has been a giggle. I've made an entire video about it. The link, as always, is in the description. Did I say I'd owned 20 bikes? Well, that was 20 that I'd bought, but the 21st was one I inherited from a lifelong friend. Sadly, lacking the space in my garage, I had no choice but to pass it on to a mate, called Phil of course, who's Lambretta mad, and it's now living its best life by the seaside, just a few doors down from where it had previously lived for almost 50 years. And those are all the bikes I've ever owned. If you want to tell me about what's been in your collection, please feel free to comment. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please consider liking, subscribing and sharing to let YouTube know we're doing something right here at 3 Phils. Thank you.